Isn't that nice? He always teases me, and it was a nice moment. Oh, that's so sweet. I don't know if I can take him being nice to me. All right, everybody, welcome to the Ingraham Angle from Washington. It's an evening of major breaking news on both sides of the Atlantic, and we have it all covered for you. You don't want to move. President Trump at Davos in Switzerland, he's explaining to world leaders and big business honchos why his America First policies are actually going to be good for a lot of other people as well. And back in Washington, the White House drops a bombshell immigration plan, and they do it ahead of schedule. President Vicente Fox might actually like this plan. That's scary to me. People on both sides of the aisle are up in arms, and in moments, I will take on frequent Trump critic and former president, as I said, from Mexico, Vicente Fox, on the details of that immigration plan and a lot more. Plus, we have 5 months of those missing text messages between the FBI's lovebirds, and they've actually been found. We asked, and they were found. We're going to tell you what the investigators have uncovered thus far. But first, Trump takes on the elites in Davos. That is the focus of tonight's angle. The global elite gather once a year in a small town nestled in the Swiss Alps to discuss political, economic, and humanitarian challenges facing the world. As a businessman, Trump actually never made the guest list. And he's the first president to go to Davos since Bill Clinton, who only attended his last year in office. So it's a conference where your net worth is described with B's, not M's. Yes, as in billions. And where people with Trump's populist views are considered persona non grata. Well, world leaders from business to politics issued a series of dire warnings in advance of Trump's appearance at Davos. And I'll bet they's made the editorial writers at the Wall Street Journal giddy.
Now he's going to Davos, and this is really oil meeting water.
From my perspective, I feel like he's going to get a bad reception there.
This year, the protesters seem particularly inspired. Trump takes the fun out of fondue.
That's just a bad poster. Fondue? I mean, they're really stretching. Well, once again, Trump has defied expectations and is surprising the world. The president crashed their swanky globalist party today, and though the world leaders continue to hit his policies on trade as protectionist, they're taking notice. Elites scrambled to take selfies with him, and they couldn't stop talking about him. They were elbowing each other out of the way along that stairway or escalator to get close. And there was substance from the president as well. It wasn't just they wanted the photo, they wanted to hear what he had to say. And sitting next to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Trump threatened to withhold aid to the Palestinians unless they return to peace talks. And then, this is important, he challenged Netanyahu.
Israel does want to make peace, and they're going to have to want to make peace too, or we're going to have nothing to do with it any longer. They never got past Jerusalem. We took it off the table. We don't have to talk about it anymore. You won 1 point, and you'll give up some points later on the negotiation, if it ever takes place. I don't know that it ever will take place.
Yeah, Bibi had to grab the Pepto for that moment. He's like, wait a second, I don't think we talked about that. Oh, I think that's a gutsy negotiator working for a deal in real time. You see it all play out. Then the president sat down with UK Prime Minister Theresa May, who's still suffering from the post-Brexit blues. And it has been reported that she has had a very strained relationship with President Trump.
The Prime Minister and myself have had a really great relationship, although some people don't necessarily believe that, but I can tell you it's true.
Well, at the conclusion of the meeting, it was announced that the president's trip to the UK is back on track. It will happen within the year. Well, it's going to be a working trip, state visit, we don't know, but it's a win nonetheless. And contrary to all that hyperbole coming from the We Are the World types, Trump isn't going to stop trading with other countries. He's not itching to blow up the world. And he's not going to stop all immigration into the U.S. In fact, we have a lot of news later on in the show about what will be specifically offered in the president's deal on immigration. But what President Trump will do is he'll pursue changes in policies that have been detrimental to U.S. workers, U.S. manufacturing, and importantly, U.S. wages. Now, what does that mean? That means that America will no longer tolerate being taken advantage of by freeloaders or cheated in international trade deals, or have its intellectual property stolen by rivals. Those days are over. And whether you're an ally like South Korea or an adversary like China, our president has put you on notice that the old days of practicing globalization on the backs of the American people are also over.
My administration is taking power back from global bureaucrats and returning that power back to the American people. And you see it all the time. You see it economically. You see it at the church. You see it in every different way. We don't sing a global anthem.
We sing the American anthem. He's not president of the world. He's president of the United States. And though some of these world leaders continue to, deride his policies, even chide him from the sidelines, they're taking notice. And if you listen closely, it's hard to miss how Trumpism, the pragmatic approach to issues like asylees and refugees and immigration, is maybe transforming the way other leaders think about these issues. This is German Chancellor Angela Merkel from today.
Europe, in its foreign policy, has not been all that active in the past. We need to take more responsibility. We need to take our destiny into our own hands.
We agree, Angela. Take your own destiny into your own hands. That's called sovereignty. That's what we're all about. Independent, free nations with unique identities standing up for their own interests and working with others. That's what Trump is all about. That's what Trump is actually doing here. We are taking our own destiny into our own hands, and we're not allowing some far-off bureaucracy to decide our future for us. And after seeing Trump's leadership on immigration and border enforcement in the U.S., Ms. Merkel may be seeing a little bit of the light herself.
We were always very proud of freedom of movement. We never really thought that much about protecting our external borders. When you look at it in hindsight, we think, well, how could we miss out on this? How could we never think about this? We felt safe and secure. Now we're working on an entry-exit system.
It's no wonder. In Germany in 2016, the crime rate among migrants and refugees skyrocketed by more than 50%. And according to The Telegraph, migrants committed nearly 175,000 suspected crimes in Germany. So suddenly, President Trump's law and order approach at the border is looking pretty good, isn't it? So the elites still snipe, though, at Trump for his dismissal of their climate change dogma, as the French president did today. Or they bristle at his decision to renegotiate NAFTA or stand up to cheating and intellectual property theft by China and other nations. He is undoubtedly shaking up the world order and reshaping the global debate in a very positive way. And though it may not make him any friends at Davos, Trump's America First philosophy is reviving our economy at home, and it's positioning us to lead the world from a place of strength, and it's about time. And that's the angle. Joining me now is former president of Mexico and frequent Trump critic, Vicente Fox. He's the author of a brand new book just out, Let's Move On, Beyond Fear and False Prophets. He's an author, and we've been chatting about a lot of things. It's great to see you. How are you? Welcome.
A pleasure, Laura. Thank you for inviting me.
Es un placer. And I said we were going to do the whole thing in Spanish, but it's not quite as good as I need to be to do that. But President Fox, you heard some of the monologue there. Your reaction to Trump at Davos. I mean, you have said everything from, you've compared him to Hitler, you've said he's an ugly American, rude, racist, going to start a war, not a real leader. 1 year into the Trump administration, the American economy is thriving, manufacturing is up, wages in some sectors are up, confidence is at an all-time high, African-American unemployment, 17-year low since it was recorded. So many great barometers, but you really have nothing positive to say about him.
No, but let me tell you, it's good that the economy moves. We all move. The world economy before Trump and with Trump is getting close to 5% growth. So it's dynamic and it's growing. In the outworld, 80% of the economy, of the global economy, is outside of the United States. So yes, there might be something to recognize to Trump in the sense that economic activity pretty much depends on expectations. So we're still waiting to see that all of this comes to be true. and then the economy will keep on going.
But you attribute that to Obama, or you attribute it to Trump? I mean, these jobs coming back into the United States and all that.
I attribute it to U.S. citizens, to corporations, to universities.
But they're responding to his policies, are they not, Mr. President?
This country is so powerful, so great.
So Trump can't change it.
It moves on its own.
So it moves on its own. There's no.
This country could not have a president, and it would be doing better, I'm sure.
Okay, that's wild. Okay, that is wild.
Look at Spain.
I've got to think of the Spanish word for what I'm thinking. It's going to come to me.
6 months with Arrajos, and they grew up.
All right, let's talk about the White House immigration proposal, an issue that you really care a lot about. It came out tonight.
This is DACA.
The DACA. 1.8 million DACA dreamers protected. That's a million more than the 800,000 he was offering to help last week. $25 billion for border wall and security, eliminate the visa lottery, change it. Those 50,000 a year would go toward the people now waiting in line to come legally, and keeping the nuclear family together, but ending the extended family chain migration. 1.8 million people given amnesty.
Yeah, 1 million more than what he said last week, but 1,000,008 what he said 2 weeks ago. Here, I hope he gains credibility, because everybody doubts that that will happen. And my only concern is that it's conditioned to getting $25 billion US from Congress. So that makes me happy, because then Mexico is not going to pay for it. So US Congress and taxpayers are going to pay for that wall. Number two, it doesn't make me happy, because to exchange one young, dreaming person that expects a great future for himself, for $1, I would not exchange it. For $25,000, I would either exchange it. So I don't know why you have to tie up together these two things. Let's get those kids really supported. They want to stay here, and if not, we welcome them in Mexico. We would love to have them. They have university degrees, and they are great human talents. Now, on the case of the 25,000, how many good things you can do with 25,000?
25 billion.
Walls don't work.
Yeah, well, okay. Well, you've never been a big fan of the wall, to say the least. You've called Trump, again, rude, all these racist, all these things. Like
he called us rapists and criminals.
No, he didn't say that. He said, and when he announced he was running, he said they're sending a rapist. Then he said there are other people who are good people coming across.
Who is sending? That's
well, I think, that's a manner of speech. You have manners of speech in Spanish. We have different ways of speaking. But, I mean, you do understand that Mexico has a problem keeping her own people in her country, satisfying their economic needs,
for the moment,
satisfying their need to be safe from criminals. So they flee your country and come to our country. Why can't you keep your own people happy in your own country? You going to blame Trump for that too?
No, let me see, but I differ from you on this. NAFTA was created for that purpose, exactly for that purpose, to bring into Mexico wealth, jobs, so that migration will be reduced and eliminated.
So why are we still getting so many
immigrants? Let me tell you the real facts. When NAFTA started, you would make $1 on the Mexican side and $10 on the U.S. side. When NAFTA started,
we got a $63 billion trade deficit with Mexico.
Who would not learn to swim to go for $10 instead of $1?
Yeah.
25 years later, today is 5 to 1. So it has come from 10 to 1.
We're subsidizing Mexico through NAFTA.
No, not subsidizing. We're doing our own work.
We can't do an hour on NAFTA, because I want to get to some other things. Because NAFTA was supposed to fix all this.
NAFTA is a great tool. And I hope
NAFTA's been great for you. You have a $63 billion trade surplus with us. It's awesome for you guys.
Sorry.
Not good for American car manufacturers.
Look at the profits of GM, Chrysler, and every U.S. company in Mexico.
Look, they can move their
profits they return to United States.
They can move their companies any day of the week they want to Mexico. If they want to do that, they can do that. But our policies are no longer going to encourage that. That's what President Trump says.
But let's take farming. Farming.
Yeah.
We import $40 billion US
it's a small percentage compared to the heavy manufacturing.
But it's 3 million farmers in the United States that live out of that.
Yeah, Big Agri wants to do more of that. No doubt about it. Let's go back to what Newsweek said about you when you were president. This was back in 2006. Vicente Fox has spent the past 5 years urging the United States to upgrade the status of millions of illegals from Mexico. Meanwhile, his own government has given legal status to only 15,000 foreigners without papers. You deported 140,000 in 2003, you deported 120,000 in 2002, and from 2002 to 2006, the number of detainments and deportations was up 74%. So you're trashing the United States for deporting Mexicans and other people from our country. We don't do that much. And meanwhile, you were deporting plenty of people, and you had lots of problems with the way immigrants were treated in the early part, especially of your tenure.
Yes, that is true. And those people are my heroes. And they contribute to this economy like nobody else, or like everybody else.
Who's your heroes? I'm not following.
Paisanos, my dear Hispanic paisanos, Mexicans here in the States.
But why did you deport? Why did you only give legal status when you were president to illegal immigrants in your country to only 15,000 people?
Because
why?
we didn't have the capacity. Because we're 1/10.
But you're a
US
humanitarian,
economy.
and Trump is Hitler. So, like,
yeah,
why?
And I try to do as much as possible.
So you could only bring it. You could only give 15,000. You had to get rid of all these hundreds and hundreds of thousands of Guatemalans.
Trump.
No, but you were you were the president of Mexico.
Oh, yes,
you got poor grades for the way you treated migrants.
Today, Mexico is full employment. Would you believe
well,
that?
that's because you guys have a $63 billion trade deficit with our country and a trade deficit with Canada
NAFTA,
as well.
Because we work NAFTA.
Yeah, you work NAFTA, but it's going to be renegotiated. Are you happy about that?
Do you remember the times when the United States would force all of us to open our markets from World War II or the year 2000?
Why does
and that's why this nation grew so much by trading with the rest of the world.
Yeah, well, China has the $360 billion trade deficit.
That was the best that could happen.
Mr. President, I am not denying that NAFTA has been great for Mexico. But we actually have to.
States.
We have a $63 billion trade deficit with Mexico. That cannot stand. And it's mostly automobile. It's not. We're not worried about the agriculture. We're worried about automobile. My question to you is.
What about China? Why don't you do the same thing with China?
We're in the process.
India.
We're doing it all.
You know how many jobs you lost
Trump
with
is
India?
doing it all. You know what I love? I'm going to say, with all of your movies, like you gave the middle finger to Trump, and you're like a distinguished elder statesman, and you're doing videos where you're putting up the middle finger to the president, saying F this, F that. If Trump is rude and all these things, why are you?
Because he offended us.
But why are you doing the same thing back?
He is offending the rest of the world. That you showed in Davos is not true. It's diplomacy.
Oh, really?
It's diplomacy. It's presidents.
He's offending the rest of the world by America coming back stronger. Well, if that's offending the rest of the world, I'm not really worried about the rest of the world being offended. They didn't like Reagan, did they? They didn't like Reagan. Remember what they called him?
We love Reagan.
You did, but the rest of the world didn't.
Us. No, we love them.
We have a lot of Mexicans living in the United States. Why is that an offense to you? I love the Mexican people. I just want the immigration needs to work for our country, just like it needs to work with you.
To Trump.
So
he should love Mexico.
1.8 million Dreamers amnesty. You'll like that?
Yes, but not conditioned to $25 million US.
Should we have any border with Mexico at this point? Do we need a border? Really?
No, there is no choice.
Okay. But you would prefer not to have a border?
Neighbors.
Okay, so we shouldn't have a border.
God didn't create borders.
Do you have a fence at your house?
We shouldn't have a border like you don't have with Canada.
Do you have a fence at your house?
This will happen in this next generation.
Okay.
Because we are going to be on a one-to-one.
We'll see. I love the fact that you adopted your 4 children. That is so admirable. I love it.
To you for
so we have that in common.
Children.
3 and 4. Good to see you. All right, thanks. And Mexico is going to be better off after NAFTA is renegotiated. I promise you, they're going to be better off. And there are big developments, Mr. President, tonight on the Russia probe and the questions of FBI corruption, missing text messages. We have a lot more to get to. Keep it locked right here. Do not step away. As obvious as it sounds, the Justice Department's Inspector General just found the missing text between those 2 FBI agents. What did he do? Well, he merely took possession of the phones. Can you imagine? The FBI claimed over the weekend it couldn't find the 5 months of text between Strzok and Page. But it took the Inspector General just 2 days after senators demanded the answers. Good for him. Also breaking tonight, Fox News can now confirm that President Trump ordered the firing of Special Counsel Robert Mueller last June, but he backed down after White House counsel Don McGahn and others convinced him not to. That news was first reported by the New York Times earlier tonight. Let's explore that and a lot else with former Harvard Law prof Alan Dershowitz in Miami and in Orlando, Congressman Ron DeSantis, Republican from Florida, and here in studio, my friend, attorney, and Democratic strategist, Scott Bolden. All right, we have a lot to get through. I've got to do it together. Professor, let's start with you on this New York Times report that the president wanted to axe Mueller, and McGahn said, can't do it, you do it, I'm out.
Well, it just shows you that everybody should listen to their lawyers, whether you're the president of the United States or anybody else. McGahn's advice was very, very sound advice. Look, the president has the constitutional authority to fire anybody in the executive branch. The Supreme Court has held that. On the other hand, it would have been very unwise politically, and it would have sounded like an admission of some kind of guilt. He's so much better off following his current lawyer's advice as well, which says, look, be nice to Mueller, say you have nothing to hide, be willing to sit down and be interviewed by him under oath, and you have nothing to lose when you do it under oath, because it's just as much a crime to lie not under oath as under oath, and respond to the questions and try to wrap up the inquiry. That is the best advice he could possibly get.
That's what he said yesterday when he left for Davos. I'm fine with sitting down under oath, answering questions. That's the better tact. I always said it would have been a ridiculous idea. I wouldn't have fired Comey when he did. I would have cleaned the whole intel community out.
I agree with you. I think that started the whole problem.
That was a huge mistake. Huge mistake. Scott, I want to go with you very quickly on this. We'll move to text and go to the congressman. Scott, the idea of firing Mueller, the New York Times, you can look at me now. The New York Times is going nuts with this. The president has the constitutional prerogative to do it. I mean, he's a regular guy. I mean, he's a businessman. He's used to firing people when he doesn't like them. Is this a big bombshell in your eye?
It's a big bombshell because it's Donald Trump. The idea that he followed his lawyer's advice, thank goodness for that. I'll have to give that GOP lawyer that. But the idea, here's the bottom line, though, and what's really behind is Donald Trump really thinks DOJ works for him. He thinks everybody in the federal government works for him. They really don't.
Yeah.
They represent the people for the United States of America.
But he's a chief executive officer,
He may
Scott.
be, but he can't fire someone legitimately who's investigating them without turning this into a constitutional crisis. It's fundamentally wrong.
It's not
the AG.
No, you're making a point of politics, and
Right.
I agree with you.
Right.
Pragmatically and appearance-wise, it would look terrible. But as a constitutional matter, as Professor Dershowitz pointed out, as the chief executive officer of the country, the head of the executive branch, he has the authority to fire anyone. He could fire Mueller right now.
It doesn't mean he has to do it.
Of course not. But that's what your lawyers are.
But he thinks that. My point is he thinks that.
Yeah, hold on. Let's go to
DOJ works for him.
Well, Professor Dershowitz, you do expect, and every president expects, some loyalty from the people who work under him. It means you don't go off half-cocked on an issue. If he thinks the Russia investigation is ridiculous, he's going to express his frustration. I have no problem with that. But then we got to get to DeSantis.
I have a problem, but it's the problem with the Constitution. The framers made a terrible mistake by combining two offices together. One, the advisor to the president in a justice matter, and the other, the chief prosecutor. Most other countries divide those functions.
All right, well, we're not going to redo
the chief prosecutor is independent.
All right, yeah, we can't redivide the.
That's not going to change.
Let's go to DeSantis. Ron, I think we covered that issue. Let's move on to these the missing texts. They were discovered. A lot of people thought you had to go to the NSA for these texts, but they found them, including one interesting text in particular. Strzok and Page discussed via text how many personnel from DOJ and FBI would be included in the Clinton investigation. And they said, one more thing, she might be our next president. The last thing you need is us going in there loaded for bear. You think she's going to remember or care that it was more DOJ than FBI? Strzok says, agreed. I called Bill and relayed what we discussed. He agrees. I will email you and blank, redacted, same. Does that indicate a more of a kid gloves treatment to Hillary in that one text, or are we making too much of that? Ron.
Well, I think it does, but, you know, that's not the only thing we have. I mean, we have the whole investigation and how it was conducted, and at all the inflection points, they were bending over backwards not to make a case against Hillary, writing the memo 2 months before they interviewed her, changing grossly negligent, which is criminal culpability, to extreme carelessness. So I think it's yet one more data point that these two folks in the FBI did have political bias. But I also think the FBI said and the DOJ, oh, we can't find these things. It was just like the IRS with Lois Lerner's emails. They didn't even really look for them. And then here the Inspector General gets them in the next 2 days. So I want to know who was responsible for sending that response to Congress saying that they were deleted, because that was not true.
That's odd. And also, Schiff spoke out. I want to play this. Adam Schiff spoke out, I guess it was earlier today, about what Republicans' tactics are here. Let's watch.
The Republicans, many of them, are all too desperate to distract attention from the Russia probe and try to put the government on trial. This has been a strategy for quite some time now. And even when they have no basis to do it, it doesn't stop them from making the most scandalous accusations against these professionals at the FBI.
Yeah, Chris Matthews also said.
I'm not a Republican.
Yeah. No, we're not.
We're
talking about. It's directed at the congressman. But let me just say. Chris Matthews also said, since when do Republicans have such a problem with law enforcement? You could flip it on them and say, since when did liberals not have concerns about the abuse of authority by federal law enforcement?
That's exactly right.
The reason
Congressman first and then Alan.
But that's exactly what the thing is, I have military background and law enforcement, and I can tell you the reason why I support law enforcement. And this is the same reason why I'm upset about what I've seen, because that's not representative of law enforcement. These are people who were not doing the job the way it's supposed to be done. And in order to have confidence in this system, if people are not behaving properly, if there was abuses, you need oversight over those, and people need to be held accountable. To just act like these agencies should be able to go on with no oversight, no accountability, that is not something that I want to sign up for.
Professor, and then I want to go to Scott.
There's no question that Strzok should have recused himself. He knew, before anybody else did, about his own biases, and he should be fired now. No person in the FBI, no Justice Department official should not recuse themselves when they've written those kinds of emails, those kinds of texts, those kinds of messages, and his failure to recuse himself from the investigation, for me, is a fireable offense.
Scott,
but he certainly has done that. He said what's bothersome about this is how politics and the GOP and the House and Senate have politicized and weaponized this information that they're receiving by a subpoena, and then picking and choosing parts of it and using it to discredit DOJ and FBI. It's wrong. That's why criminal investigations ought not be commented on until they're complete. And the allegations against the Democrats or DOJ and FBI are so negative, it's unnecessary and inappropriate.
Right. I think the question we're going to determine is whether the FISA process was weaponized to try to stop Trump from becoming
president.
President,
a lot of other information
or after.
that corroborated that memo.
We'll
see. Can't focus on that memo alone.
Yeah, well, we'll see in the full context. Gentlemen, great segment as always. And I have a question, guys. Could President Trump stop a backlash from his base over his new immigration plan? How did it go from 800,000 getting amnesty to 1.8 million? Sounds like a Jeff Flake plan to me. When we come back. The White House just unveiled a new immigration framework to address the DACA problem and border enforcement. Here's what they're proposing, it looks like. A path to citizenship for now 1.8 million illegal immigrants who arrived as children, much more than the 800,000 currently under just the DACA protection. $25 billion for border wall and security, and elimination of the visa lottery program, and an end to chain migration. They call it protecting the nuclear family. That's how they're describing that. But how will this fly with the Trump base? And also my reaction from my guests to that interview I just did with Vicente Fox. I'm joined by Fox News contributor, former Congressman Jason Chaffetz from Phoenix, and here in studio, former Obama State Department official David Tafuri. Great to see both of you. Before we get into this immigration plan, David, you were watching Vicente Fox, former president of Mexico for 6 years. What were your thoughts on that?
Well, you guys didn't agree on very much. I thought you had a very interesting line of questioning, which is pointing out that when he was president of Mexico, they only legalized 15,000 immigrants, and they deported hundreds of thousands of immigrants. That's not really consistent with his criticism of the U.S., and I didn't think he explained that very well. But I do think some of his criticisms about President Trump are accurate.
Jason, Vicente Fox has pretty much called Donald Trump everything in the book, every name in the book. And I think in calling Trump rude, and you respond by being even more rude, I didn't think that was all that convincing.
No, I think he's been childish at best over the first year. To not acknowledge the success that Donald Trump has had as President of the United States is just inaccurate. But I thought it was interesting, his take on the wall. You know, you don't see, I think his opposition to the wall and building a fence is the fact that it will actually work. I think people like Vicente Fox are actually okay with human trafficking. I think they're okay with the moving of drugs because it's good for the economy of Mexico. And the fact that the wall, fact of the matter is the wall works. They don't actually want to solve that problem.
Well, they want the criminals to come. Well, when Trump said they're sending their criminals, the people who come through Guada and El Salvador, MS-13 from Salvador, you think they want them hanging out in Cabo? I don't think so. They want them going up to California, which they do.
And look, and there's nobody that's trying to break into Mexico from the United States.
No,
it's a
one-way
move. Yeah.
All right, let's go to the immigration plan by the White House, because this has really surprised a lot of people. Congressman, 1.8 million people getting amnesty, a jump from 1 million from last week. Already getting favorable reviews from some of the more open borders Republican types. But I'm getting pinged with text after text, people saying, how is Trump negotiating against himself here? What's your reaction?
3 of the 4 points I'm okay with, but the special pathway to citizenship, absolutely not. That's not what he campaigned on. It's not what he promised. It's not something, if I were still in Congress, that I could vote for and support. I'm okay with a legal status, but I don't think you give them, I think they should get in line like everybody else. And you know who we're not serving? The people that are forgotten? The people who weren't willing to break the law, the people who are trying to come here legally and lawfully, the people who have been waiting in line, those are the people we have been failing. I don't think they should get a special pathway to citizenship. Not one person, let alone 1.8 million of them.
And David, Nancy Pelosi, I don't think we have the full screen, but Nancy Pelosi has already come out blasting it as blatantly anti-immigrant. She just went on and on and on. Oh, we do have it. Oh, great. The 50% cut to legal immigration, the framework, and the recent announcements to end temporary protected status for Central Americans and Haitians are both part of the same cruel agenda. They are part of the Trump administration's unmistakable campaign to make America white again. Oh, isn't she lovely? I think we need to update that photo to make it more recent, by the way. What's your reaction to that? I mean, come on, 1.8 million from Donald Trump, and she's calling it like a white supremacist proposal? She's off her rocker meds or whatever it is. I don't know what it is.
We didn't know what Trump was going to do. He's come out with a compromise that I think is reasonable. Some Democrats are not going to like it, clearly, as you heard from Pelosi and other leaders. Some Republicans, hardline Republicans, don't like it either. The compromise that they reached is they are going to have a pathway for citizenship for Dreamers. That's important.
More than
In
Dreamers.
exchange, they're going to have a lot of money for the wall and border security. Some Democrats don't like that, but that's a reasonable thing for Democrats to give up in exchange for the Dreamers. Now, there are 803,000 Dreamers right now. As you pointed out, 1.8 million could get into this program, but they have to apply. So they're not all immediately going to become on the pathway to legal citizenship under this deal. They have to apply. But it is interesting that Trump has almost expanded the ability of people to be in the Dreamer program. That was unexpected, but this is the trade-off. Democrats aren't going to like that I'm saying this, but I think it's a good deal.
And I think that it's probably the best deal that they can put forth to get the votes that they need, to get 60 votes. I mean, like it or not, that's probably the only thing they're going to get 60 votes for, and I bet they've been doing the numbers. But for Nancy Pelosi to call it basically white supremacist, you just lose all credibility on that, complete. Jason, before we let you go, up or down, will this thing be acceptable to the House of Representatives?
I think it might pass because you probably get all of the Democrats. If they unite and get behind it, then you get the squishy middle and they get to the numbers they need.
So Trump delivers amnesty to almost 2 million people. Wow. Gentlemen, thank you so much. And up next, a new exclusive look at the all-out war between the president and the media. Fox News' Howie Kurtz is here to give us a preview of his new book, share some new revelations. Stay here. A new book on the Trump presidency is unlike anything you've seen before. Here's what the author wrote a few days ago in The Hollywood Reporter. Donald Trump is staking his presidency, as he did his election, on nothing less than destroying the credibility of the news media. And the media are determined to do the same to him. Only one side can achieve victory. To a stunning degree, the press is falling into the president's trap. We're delighted to welcome the writer of that piece, Howie Kurtz, the host of Media Buzz on Fox News and the author of a soon-to-be huge New York Times bestseller, Media Madness, Donald Trump, the Press, and the War Over the Truth. Howie, there's so many nuggets in here we've got to get to, and I loved your piece in The Hollywood Reporter. I found this element from Jonathan Martin from the New York Times that you captured in your book to be stunning. Weeks before the convention, an RNC staff member called Martin one night to challenge one of his stories. The reporter shot back, "You're a racist and a fascist. Donald Trump is a racist and a fascist. We all know it, and you're complicit. By supporting him, you're all culpable." Spicer called the top Times editor and unloaded about Jonathan Martin's behavior. Half an hour later, Martin called Spicer and demanded, "How dare you go behind my back? What are you doing calling one of my editors?" "Excuse me," Spicer replied. "You call one of my people and say this, and I don't have the right to complain?" Jonathan Martin is one of the top writers at the New York Times.
Yeah, he's a good reporter, but I have 4 sources with first-hand knowledge, including the RNC staffer that had this conversation, or actually 2 conversations, that confirmed this for me. And obviously, now Jonathan Martin is disputing it since the book came out. He says he can't imagine saying such a thing. But Sean Spicer went on a radio show today and confirmed on the record that my account is accurate.
Well, he is not only such an important reporter for the New York Times, but his accounts of the campaign are then repeated and taken by other reporters and run with. So when he's reporting on a candidate like Trump and now the presidency, he thinks Trump's a racist and a fascist. You must have a desire to remove a racist and a fascist from office.
You know, I have a lot of exclusive reporting in this book about what other journalists say about the president on Twitter when they think that only their friends are kind of following it.
Right.
And I think that one of the problems here, look, there's been a lot of legitimate stories about the president. Sometimes the president creates his own distractions. But I think that too many people, journalists, now think it's their job to save the country from Donald Trump. And that's not journalism, that's advocacy.
It's crusading. And it's fine when you're a pundit or you're a radio host like I am, and you want to, take the charge, take the hill. But it's disconcerting. And the public's view of the press today, Howie, where is it today versus 10 years ago? Has it declined?
Oh, it's dramatically declined, and it's dramatically declined even further since Donald Trump was a candidate and now president, because of people who support this president, a big chunk of the country, feel that when
45% now,
when the mainstream media attacks him, they also feel like the mainstream media treat them with disdain. And so what no one has understood is that negative coverage of Donald Trump campaign and as president actually helps him, because he controls the news agenda, because we love to write about ourselves, and because it strikes a nerve with his supporters.
Yesterday when he left for Davos, it reminded me of your book, because Maggie Haberman says something about testifying. You're going to testify under oath. And he said, "Who said that?" And he looked, and I think it was Maggie Haberman, in the back and forth.
Sure, yeah.
And he said, "Well, did you know if Hillary testified under oath? Was she questioned under oath?" "Well, I don't know." "You don't know?" It's like a bar fight with him, with a member of the press. But is that always smart?
It's often smart that he's his own spokesman, even though he talks in street language. It's not always smart to attack journalists individually, because I think it creates distractions, but I think there's damage on both sides.
You got to buy this book to read about Steve Bannon, what he warned about regarding impeachment. Phenomenal. Howie Kurtz. And we have great news for American workers caused by the tax cuts and more. Next. Another week, another round of companies with unbelievable news for employees, and it's all due to the Trump tax cuts. Today, Home Depot announced bonuses up to $1,000 for all of its hourly employees based on length of service. Yesterday, liberal Starbucks had to announce other great news. They said bonuses ranging from $500 to $2,000. The company will also spend a total of $250 million on pay hikes and increased benefits. Great news. And the day before, Mickey Mouse said it will spend $125 million on $1,000 bonuses to its 125,000 U.S.-based employees. That's a lot of fun in the land of fun. And J.P. Morgan Chase announced raises for 22,000 workers, plus a $750 bonus for workers as well as savings of $750 a year for health insurance costs. This is what Miss Positivity, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, thought about it all.
I'm not sure that $1,000, which is taxable, goes very far.
first of all, if you could hear that, Starbucks just announced $2,000 bonuses, so she's wrong on that. Secondly, the pay raises and bonuses total in the billions of dollars, benefiting 3 million American workers and counting, Debbie. That's according to Americans for Tax Reform. I say this to DSW. If you put the American worker first, not your party, you won't have to be such a sourpuss. Stay with us. We'll be right back, and we're very, very positive. Okay, before we go, I want to hear what you think about President Trump's new immigration plan. 1.8 million undocumented illegal immigrants get a pathway to citizenship, end to chain migration, full funding for the wall, end of visa lottery, kind of. So tweet me at Ingraham Angle and react to the Vicente Fox interview as well. We'll be doing more of that tomorrow night. But have no fear, because Shannon Bream and the Fox News at Night team are all over this evening's big news developments. Shannon.
And there are plenty of them. Laura, thank you so much. Big news on Special Counsel Robert Mueller and President Trump tonight, plus a whole lot more.